system at the end of their life.
Both ways. Now, the main headlines this lunchtime. The Environment Agency says there has been a big jump in the number of raw sewage spills into England's rivers and seas. A review has found there were missed opportunities to intervene in the case of 10-month-old Finn Bowden, who was killed by his parents shortly after he was placed back in their care. And officials in the US have recovered the data recorder from a ship that destroyed a bridge in Auckland yesterday. That's it from us. Every day with PM at 5. I'm Sarah Montague, and that's the world at 1:45. Studio direction was by Holly Palmer. The editor was Mark Faulkner. Now on Radio 4, we continue our series exploring how trust has shifted over time. Mitcham, South West London.
Yeah, you need to see your GP as quickly as possible.
This is Julian. Julian runs a barber's and a laundrette.
So my name is Julian Appiah. Most people know me as Julian Daxler, and I'm the owner of Jules, the hair clinic.
But that's not all.
Your blood pressure is higher than normal. Very high.
If not diagnosed and treated, high blood pressure can lead to serious problems, such as heart attacks, strokes, and kidney failure. What's remarkable about this gentle but potentially life-saving interaction is that it's taking place not in an institution, like a GP practice or hospital. It's happening here, in a highly trusted community barbershop.
I call it a prestige barbershop because I make you feel like you're in your household. It includes whatever you're going through, where you need help as a human being, where we can have very educated and positive discussions. You cut my hair, you make me look handsome, and I'm able to get interviews and appointments and jobs and other things. Why can't I just allow you to give me a reading, which will benefit me as well?
What I'll do next is, because it's a bit high, I'm going to talk to my GP and see what can be done about it. So,
I'm Rachel Botsman, and over 5 episodes, I'm exploring the intriguing history of trust. We've traced how society went from local trust, the face-to-face trust experienced in small communities, to institutional trust. The shift from trusting our immediate circle to trusting institutions led to an age of increased trade and urbanization. It required mechanisms such as brands, unions, contracts, insurance, and middlemen, all part of the workings of institutional trust. But as the role of institutions grew in our lives, events happened which shook their foundations, and people started to question their purpose and intentions. The trust we placed in them began to seriously crumble. This is episode 3, Distrust in the Institution. In the aftermath of the Second World War, a whole range of institutions sprung up. The United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, NATO, Ofsted, and of course the NHS. These institutions were remarkable inventions that helped glue our societies together, both within our own countries and globally. At their inception, institutions were intended to improve the quality of lives in all kinds of ways, from health to rebuilding strong communities, from economic growth to functioning democracies. But this is a story of how trust in one system, healthcare in the United States, unraveled, and how it can be a lesson to all institutions. It's 1932 in Tuskegee, Alabama. The United States Public Health Service engaged doctors at the City Institute to deliver the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis. Aiming to track the natural progression of the disease over time, they recruited 600 rural black men, most of whom had syphilis. But there was a fatal flaw. The group never gave their informed consent. In fact, they were never even told they had syphilis. They were not told the truth about how the study would be done or why it was going ahead.
They were told that they were going to be studied in hopes of helping science.
This is Dr. Bio Curry Winchell.
But I go by Dr. BCW.
She's a family medicine and urgent care doctor, a medical director and founder of Beyond Clinical Walls. At the time, the group were told they had bad blood.
That's really important when you think of the terminology that was used. They were not armed with what they actually had.
This group of mostly poor farmers were recruited, or rather bribed, with the promise of free medical examinations, free meals and burial payments.
So it was in a very underserved, impoverished area. So the offerings of a meal or burial benefits was something that was very appealing to those individuals. And you had segregation, so you had a limited amount of clinicians available to even see those Black men. So all of those pieces are important, not just the meal and the burial benefits, but to not want to be a burden on your family.
For the rest of their lives, the group was subjected to painful spinal taps and daily blood draws, and were actively discouraged from seeking medical advice. They were not offered antibiotics, which were widely available from 1947 as a treatment for syphilis. Instead, they struggled with health complications related to the disease. Without knowing it, some passed it on to their partners and children. It wasn't until 1972, 40 years later, when the experiment was finally exposed by whistleblowers. It became front-page news and generated widespread public outrage. By this point, the majority of victims had died, many from syphilis-related causes.
It's just, one of those things that carries through for mistrust in the African American Black community to this day. And so my father, he knew people in this study. Often if he did have an ailment or something was going on, he would say, well, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to believe me. It's going to be a waste of my time. He was always afraid that they were going to test on him, that they would help someone else while he suffered.
Generational trust scars run deep. When an institution, such as public healthcare, breaches trust in such a catastrophic way, it can have life-altering consequences. This unjust treatment of Black men led to a much wider suspicion of the medical system. In 2016, researchers at Stanford Medical School and the University of Tennessee suggested there was a strong link between the public revelation of the Tuskegee study and poor health outcomes for Black men. Decades later, distrust caused by the syphilis study was linked to a higher likelihood of Black men dying before age 75. A lack of trust in doctors shortened their lifespans. The US healthcare system hasn't been the only institution rocked by scandal. The financial crash in 2008, the LIBOR scandal, the MP expenses scandal, Windrush, the Panama Papers, Partygate during COVID-19, the post office crisis, it goes on and on. Research conducted 10 years after the financial crash found that 2/3 of British people did not trust banks to work in the best interests of society. And surveys from King's College London last year found that confidence in government is at a historic low, and there's been a decline in trust in the media and the police. It sounds doomsday for trust. Having studied trust for over 15 years, I have a few thoughts as to why trust in our institutions has fallen to such a low level. First, there's accountability. Some people are punished for wrongdoing, while many others get off scot-free. It seems like different rules for different folks. Take the aftermath of the financial crash. Only a single investment banker in the United States went to prison, and in the UK, it was 0. For institutions to retain their credibility and our confidence, there must be accountability for untrustworthy decisions and behaviours. Secondly, the digital age is flattening hierarchies and eroding trust in experts and authorities. It's hard to know who or what to trust anymore. This is amplified by so-called echo chambers, where we stay within our filter bubbles of information. And finally, there's the critical issue of integrity, when the public no longer believe that the intentions of the institution are aligned with the best interests of society. In the aftermath of the Tuskegee study, there were widespread reforms in the ethics of medical trials, but it came way too late.
What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence.
That's part of President Bill Clinton's formal apology made on May 16, 1997, to both the victims of the study and the nation at large.
What the United States government did was shameful.